Hello everybody and welcome to Bright Weird. Interesting subject this one because today I'm going to be talking about relativity, quantum fluctuation, light and death. An interesting collection of subjects with one curious connection. You.
It is said that when we die, we go back to the light, back to that place whence we came. But what if we don't go to the light? What if we go to the place where the light is? In Einstein's theory of relativity, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Energy and mass are equivalent and transmutable. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a detailed lecture about relativity, but I will lay out a few key observations that fall out of its genius. We cannot travel at the speed of light because we have mass, and any object with mass requires energy to move. The faster you move, the closer you get to the speed of light and the more energy you require, until at the speed of light, an object with mass would require an infinite amount of energy, more energy than there is in the entire universe, just to sustain itself at the speed of light. Thus, things with mass cannot travel at the speed of light. We have a positive mass, therefore we travel slower than the speed of light. We are subluminal and stuck falling forwards in time at a rate of 1 second per second relative to ourselves. We cannot travel freely in time. We are stuck falling forward like a surfer on a temporal wave. For subluminal objects, the arrow of time, relatively speaking, points from the past to the future and gives us something called cause and effect. So understanding that we have a positive mass, what about objects with a negative mass? You're probably thinking that objects with a negative mass travel at the speed of light, and if you are, you would be wrong. Objects that have a negative mass still have mass, and Einstein's theory of relativity still applies, but in opposition in respect to items with a positive mass. Negative mass particles travel faster than the speed of light. They are superluminal, and just like the subluminal, they cannot travel at precisely the speed of light. There's one key difference with superluminal objects. The arrow of time points in the opposite direction. So understanding we've got these things with positive mass and other things with a negative mass, and neither of those can travel at the speed of light. So, what travels at the speed of light? Simple. Things with no mass, of course. And an example of this is light, which has no mass, and as such can and does travel at what we call the speed of light. It requires no energy to be propelled, and as such naturally exists at that singularity. The speed of light is 180,000 miles per second, or 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. At least, that's how we perceive it. Perhaps it's us that's moving, and light is perfectly stationary. But I digress. Objects at the place we call the speed of light exist at the temporal North Pole, a place of all time and no time. On Earth, when you're at the North Pole, you can choose to go north, south, east or west. Same deal here. If you're at the temporal North Pole, you can choose to travel in any direction in time and be anywhere while simultaneously being nowhere in a four-dimensional sense. That's because the speed of light, the temporal North Pole, is in fact a higher dimension. So here's a simple diagram to explain what I'm trying to convey here. And on the left you can see the past, and on the right the future. So starting on the left, we've got positive mass, subluminal objects, things that are going slower than the speed of light, and the arrow of time for them is going from the past to the future, left to right as shown here. On the right hand side, we've got negative mass particles, superluminal objects. Now the arrow of time for them, relative to us, seems to be going in the opposite direction. Their normality is travelling from the future into the past. In the centre we've got zero mass particles. Now they are, let's call it, luminal, and they exist at the temporal North Pole. Now, a more occult way of showing this drawing would be as follows. Imagine a circle, and right bang smack in the perfect centre is light, the speed of light, the temporal North Pole. Now on the left you can see we've got the positive mass subluminal objects travelling with their hour of time going from the past to the future, and on the right hand side negative mass superluminal objects travelling from the future into the past. Now the diagrams that I've just shown you here aren't even close to how it actually is. I'm trying to express multiple dimensions in a two-dimensional diagram, which isn't really possible, but hopefully you get the idea. Imagine light as existing in the centre or a fifth dimension, or the space between spaces. There's a curious phenomenon called quantum fluctuation, and this is where in a perfect vacuum, particles suddenly appear from nowhere and then disappear again as quickly as they appeared, seemingly without reason. What you are likely witnessing in quantum fluctuation are superluminal negative mass particles travelling from the future into the past relative to you. The reason they seem to appear and suddenly disappear is because you can't see into the future, so you can't see where they're coming from. And you can't see into the past, so you can't see where they're going. So as far as you're concerned, they just appear and disappear as they pass through your temporal dimensional time frame. Imagine capturing those negative mass particles in a containment field and releasing them in an organised pulse train. You could send a message into the past. Wait, that means... Somebody, give me a particle accelerator and where's my lorry ticket? The Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Geneva. One of the largest science experiments in the history of mankind. And you think they're really going to tell you what they built it for? It is said that when we die, we go to the light, back to the place whence we came. When our spiritual essence, which naturally has no mass, leaves the body at death, we are no longer shackled by the restrictions of four-dimensional space-time. Therefore, when you die, your essence or spirit goes back to the temporal North Pole, the place where all spiritual beings live and have always resided, the place whence we cometh. This leaves the most obvious answer to something called the Fermi paradox. So I've mentioned the Fermi paradox in previous videos, but I'll just touch on it again here. The Fermi paradox is the discrepancy between the lack of conclusive evidence of advanced extraterrestrial life and the likelihood for its existence. Physicist Enrico Fermi's name is associated with this paradox because of a casual conversation he had in the summer of 1950 with his fellow physicists Edward Teller, Herbert York and Emil Konopinski. While walking to lunch, the men discussed recent so-called UFO reports and the possibility of faster-than-light travel. The conversation moved on to other topics, until during lunch, Fermi just blurted out, But where is everybody? The concept of faster-than-light travel seems a nonsense to me because you'd simply travel backwards in time, but I digress. Anyway, back to Fermi. So what Fermi was asking was, given the infinite size of the universe, the infinite amount of stars and an infinite amount of planets, where is everybody? Where are all the aliens? The answer is simple. They're in higher dimensional states. Places you cannot see or touch while you're shackled to four-dimensional space-time. Aliens are not going to waste their time travelling through outer space in big interstellar spacecraft, taking billions of years to get anywhere. They're just not going to do it. As soon as they've got the technological ability, they're going to raise themselves into a higher dimensional state and be anywhere and everywhere whenever they want. Now all of these creatures, whatever you want to call them, angels, demons, genies, jinns, spirits, ghosts or aliens, they exist at the temporal North Pole. They are where the light is. You know, I read somewhere recently that we are in fact ghosts driving skeletons covered in meat on a rock hurtling through four-dimensional space-time. Now perhaps four-dimensional existence is a game that we play to bring richness to our existence, or perhaps The place where we are currently is a prison. Who knows? Well, I'll tell you who knows. You do. Not the you that you think you are, that's just your ego. The part of your existence that dies with the body. I'm talking about the inner you. The real you, the silent aspect deep inside. That knows the truth. And I suppose where would the fun be if you knew that you were playing a PlayStation 72 game in a higher dimension? If you die before you die, then you will never truly die. Remember who you are and save your very essence to the cloud. Let your ego die so that you can truly live. Because if the ego dies, all that is left is the inner you, the immortal principle inside you. Then perhaps the memories of all the things that you do in this life will have a better chance of returning to the light and reappearing in a future incarnation. And perhaps aspects of this principle can account for past life regression or the perpetual advent of sages throughout the remotest avenues of time. Perhaps there is only one of us, one God living every life, forever, in an infinite multiverse. So where do you go when you die? Well, your body and your ego are going nowhere. But we, my dear friend, are already there.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that insight into some pretty weird stuff. I'm Steve. This has been Bright Weird. Thanks for watching.